Apologies for that. Some absolutely horrific noises as the introduction played, but it wouldn't be 1874 without some form of technical issue. Hopefully, that's the only one that we have in the show. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Jacob Tanswell, as we're going to look at the curious case of Donyell Malen, who joined Villa in January. Fair to say the move hasn't gone as planned so far. This show is, as ever, sponsored by Luke Roper, and if you want to get 20% off everything Luke have to offer, then use the code TVV20 and you'll get your 20% off. Jacob, how are you? International break, always a good time for you, I feel.
Yeah, really good time. I actually love international breaks now. I know when I was not as a journalist, I would hate them and how frustrating they are for the fan, but they're wonderful because you can just take a breather. You can have a weekend off, and at the same time, you can get a lot of the pieces that you've got in the background bubbling away, make really good strides on them. So, been working every day since, but it's been really good actually. It's been good to have some time to meet people, which is not
Yeah.
always something you have, especially when Villa are playing so many games.
Also, you've got, this international break's probably a little bit more interesting than the last one in November. The November one's always very, very tedious. But for this one, there's three Villa players potentially going to be involved tonight again in the Tuchel's first game. So that's exciting. I've got my England shirt on. I'm looking forward to the game this evening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what is it, Esri Konsa might play as well. I'm not sure. Morgan Rogers, I think he might be on the bench, but
Ah,
yeah. But I don't know for sure. So it'd be great to see. Maybe Rashford as well. That's a big surprise. But it's been a while since we did a podcast, Dan. So I'm glad you've invited me back on.
I always invited Jacob, but you're a very busy boy. I'm a busy boy as well. It's sometimes very difficult to get the diaries to align. We're going to do a show next week that we've got lined up, the two of us, but we wanted to do something this week as well. I don't like to not do content when there's an international break, and we've come up with the subject of Donyell Malen. Villa's kind of, in terms of incomings transfer wise for money, Donyell Malen was a relatively big outlay for Villa back in January, but it's fair to say that things haven't quite transpired the way he would have wanted. Probably things didn't transpire the way the club thought they would transpire in January as
Yeah,
well. Obviously, John Duran departing and then Villa making a couple of really high-profile loan attacking signings. So I think at the start of January, Villa probably, when they signed Malen, had a very different scenario in mind for how things were going to turn out and pan out for Donyell Malen. But the fact is that he hasn't been registered for the Champions League. We've barely seen him. I think he's had one Premier League start so far. Is that right? Have I got that right?
yeah.
I think he started one Premier League game so far. Since that start, I know there was an illness thrown in there as well. We haven't really seen him. First off, is everything I've just said true? The way January transpired, is that what's held Marlon back?
Yeah, exactly. It's completely true. And I think Villa were in a very different situation when he signed or when Villa first registered their interest to Dortmund in him, because Emery and Villa had wanted him in the previous two windows. They couldn't quite get the finances to work. He was never like the main target in any window, but it was always one player that Villa thought, okay, we can do. Marlin changed his agents in September, and I think that was a good accelerator really to make sure he can join in the January transfer window. Villa were very clever in how they did the deal. They couldn't pay for him outright, so they obviously Jadon Philogene was sanctioned to go, and that allowed the money for Marlin to come in. And Villa were not sure, and they didn't expect that what would ensue in the later weeks, really, in terms of Marcus Rashford and Asensio. And they won't admit it, but if you told Villa at the time they'd signed Asensio and Rashford, would they have signed Marlin as well? I think they probably would have kept their powder dry and probably saved some of that money for the summer window. But they've got Marlin now. Like you say, it hasn't gone as well as planned so far, but it's still early days. But the early months have been quite tumultuous, really, for him, because he's been sold a Champions League promise that didn't materialise, and he's been sold extra game time and game time that encouraged him to pursue a move to the Premier League and Aston Villa.
So, with that in mind, all that stuff you've said doesn't sound great, does it? As a player, he's got to be frustrated either deep down or on the outside as well. There's going to be obvious frustration for Marlon because you've used the word promises there. Footballers don't like it when promises are broken. It's not a good place to be, and there'll probably be an element of him that understands and can see. Someone had to be left out of the Champions League squad. How's he reacted to everything that's gone on, Jacob?
Yeah, he wasn't obviously best pleased in the first couple of days when Emery and his staff had to break the news to him. But at the same time, he does look older than he is. He's only just turned 26, right? And he's got a lot of experience now, so he would have to get his head around it. And he would have got his head around it. He knows that if he just sulks, it's not helping him or the team. So, he's obviously back in the league picture, although he's not playing much. I think the Cardiff game really was a bit of a real sore point for him because he'd just been left out of the Champions League squad. He would have started that game, and then he's sick, so that meant game time's even more far off. But I think he's reacted quite well. If he wasn't reacting, he would have been in the squad. But I think there's a lot of sympathy for him from coaches, from Emery, from players that he joins, and even speaks publicly about one of the reasons why he joins because Villa are a Champions League club, and yet he doesn't play in the Champions League. So yeah, it's a hugely sore point.
Is this where the kind of environment at Villa comes into play? So we know Emery's a pretty good man manager. He will keep his distance from players at
Yeah.
times, but he's got good man management skills. There's a big coaching staff around him as well. Do you know of anything that they've kind of done to boost his morale, keep his spirits up? Because I said actually before or when he got left out, I think I said just after that I think it makes it harder to involve him in the league because he's
Yeah.
not going to be playing in the next Champions League game, and you're trying to build people up for those Champions League games, and you're trying to get Rashford and Asensio up to speed so that they're up to speed for the Champions League games, and it's very difficult to involve someone who for a lot of your fixtures you're not going to be able to involve them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of what they've been doing to try and make sure he's okay, but I know that obviously, like you say, Unai Emery can be a good man manager. He was the one that wanted Marlon, so they would have had that connection there. It might have been damaged briefly when Emery was telling them the news, but even though Emery's not always the guy that's going to text and text players, make sure they're okay, they have got Vidagani, who is the person that all players go to if there's an issue. There was an incident last year where one player was quite angry and annoyed that he wasn't playing much, so Vidagani would go to them and he soothed that potential problem over quite quickly. So it would have been Vidagani doing it. I think I probably come from a different side of the fence to you. I think I would have played him even more in the Premier League because it would have given him a bit more of a fire to kind of prove himself. But also at the same time, he's very fresh as well. So when a lot of the players look like a little bit leggy at times, perhaps, I think he would have really wanted to come on or start games and make a real big impact. But again, it's always difficult for any new sign to come in midway through the season, and you're probably hoping that let's let him have the full pre-season, let him have a summer, and then really get to work next season.
I felt the brief times that we have seen him as well, Jacob. He's looked pretty lively. Actually,
Yeah,
I think back to I know we saw him very very briefly against Brentford. I mean, someone's referenced it in the comments in the chat, but even coming on for like that a couple of minutes must be a little bit frustrating and a little bit demoralising, mustn't it? But he came on with about 10 minutes left of the Chelsea game, I think it was, and I thought he looked really lively, and I actually think he helped tip that game in Villa's favour with his direct running when he came on, getting in behind. His movement's very good from what I've seen.
yeah.
But where does it? Let's go back to January before we've signed Rashford and Asensio. What do you think the plan was for him? Where do you think Villa saw him fitting into the current system? Because you've done an article this week about Rashford where
Yeah.
they've had to completely, it's like a massive compliment to Rashford that Emery's ripped up what he's done for the last 18 months to kind of accommodate Rashford and flip his system.
Hmm.
Where was Marlon going to go in that system, do you think?
Yeah, so in December, it was put that Villa would sign, or their two main priorities, and would be a right back and a versatile attacker. And when they signed Marlon, Villa were like, "This is our versatile attacker." So
Sure.
we thought he would add competition to Leon Bailey, who's obviously not been the same since his new contract and has had pretty poor year, well, very poor year by standards, but also and more acutely, can play up front as well as a number 9. And with that issue going in the background whether Duran or Watkins would move, that meant by Marlon coming in, they wouldn't have to sign a number 9 immediately in the winter. It meant that Marlon could do a job; he could deputise for 6 months in that position as a backup to one of those two. So that was where they saw him, and obviously he was not going to be a first choice starter for every game, but he was going to be in and around the squad. He was going to be starting games. He's probably maybe the 12th or 13th player in some ways, but now obviously that's changed a lot with the other new recruits.
Is there any kind of rumbling that this would unsettle him enough that he might look to get out in the summer if he doesn't play much football towards the end of the season? Or do you think he's the type of character that will think, well, right, I'll come down pre-season, everyone's on an even playing field. I'll get a pre-season under Emery, learn his methods, and I'm going to hit the ground running next season. Is he that kind of character? 'Cause I don't know much about him.
Yeah, I don't. I must admit, I don't know what he's like as a character, to be honest with you. But you'd hope that he's still early days. He's still acclimatizing. That he would have spoken to Emery when, probably when he got left out of the Champions League squad, and he would have known the plan. Vidagani and Monchi would have told him the plan as well. So you'd like to think he'd have a bit more faith in the project. And like we all know, you could never rule out a player leaving Aston Villa, but I'd be surprised if he did. And also with Leon Bailey, there's potential that he leaves in this summer. I think that's certainly more likely. So if Bailey,
that's a big possibility.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if Bailey goes, then Malen could then be promoted up the order a little bit more like that. So I just think it's a case of it's been a difficult couple of months for Malen, but in the off season, in the summer, he can be better. And just going to your point about him making an impact, I think he's been really impactful in games, and his data shows that he's like in the top 9% of strikers or wingers from Europe's top 5 leagues for shots per 90, top 12% for touches in the penalty box. So he, in the final third, he can make an impact. He gets himself about. But the issue, I think, reason why Emery's not playing as much is his all-round play in terms of connecting with players. He's in like the bottom 12% for people, for strikers, for touches, for passing, for progressive passing. So if he can just develop that side of the game in the next couple of months, then he should be in a better position to really challenge for a starting place next season.
Isn't it hard? It's going to be hard for him to develop that, and it's certainly going to be hard for him to develop relationships within the current squad and get used to how the squad are playing if we don't see him. And there has been caveats, but that illness probably only ruled him out of that one game against Cardiff. But
yeah,
there's been games where he's sat on the bench and hasn't come on, or he's come on very late. I suppose he came on against Wolves and he did score. He got disallowed, but that was encouraging because you saw his movement. He got at the end of something, and I know he was offside, but he wasn't offside. He put the ball into the back of the net, so that was a constructive move, and that was something that was a positive, and that I look at as being a positive. But it's going to be hard for him if he's not playing to kind of get better at those things, isn't it? You can't. There's only so much you can do on the training ground. There's so much footage you can watch as a Villa player.
Yeah, he's only played 21% of available minutes. Which is quite shocking for the minutes he's been available for really in the league. So that's not ideal. And I think the Cardiff game, like I say, was a big problem because he would have played 90 minutes there or close to it, and you would have seen a lot more from him, and he would therefore be able to develop those relationships with players. But he can do a lot in training. He can always improve and acclimatise to how Emery wants you to play. But I think another issue is, like we say, we've talked about Rashford being an attacker, but with Rashford and Asensio coming in, it means Morgan Rogers is playing on the right, and Villa don't then play with a right winger. So not only has Malen got Leon Bailey to contend with, he's also got Morgan Rogers, and you don't dislodge Morgan Rogers if he's going to play, and you want Asensio and him in the same team. So it's kind of like he's been pushed down another order simply through Villa changing their formation and structure. So it's not been ideal, but maybe if he wants some solace, maybe he looks at Yuri Tillemans and sees the challenges he had early on in his Villa career and sees how he's reacted since.
I mean, if he was looking to use the international break as a bit of a reset and a bit of a morale boost as well, that hasn't got off to the best start because he just sat on the bench for 90 minutes for Holland last night in their 2-2 draw with Spain. So he didn't even manage to get any minutes for Holland. Do you feel sorry for him? People don't often talk about these things with footballers. People are quite hard-minded when it comes to footballers. But you're coming and trying to adapt to a new league, a new country, a new team, and the challenges that have been thrown up for him and stuff that's kind of out of his control that isn't really what was planned for him. Do you feel sorry for him?
Yeah, I do. From a footballing perspective, of course, he earns a lot of money, and he would have known that he would have been a starter. He's not stupid. He would have realised that there's a huge lot of attackers in his way. But at the same time, for a lad that's still trying to find his feet, he's had quite a difficult 12 months really in terms of him pushing to leave Dortmund and him coming into it. Back to England again, having been at Arsenal, finding a place, working under a new manager. Not only are you not playing, but it's going to have an effect on your confidence, isn't it? The fact that the manager's chosen 3 other players over you for a Champions League squad. I know fans might say it's obvious that Asensio and Rashford would be in, but these guys are on loan. Marlin's signed now permanently, and he's being left out. So I think his confidence would have taken a big hit, and I would have felt sorry for him there.
Because if you're a permanent player and you see 2 loans coming in, look, there will be an element of understanding because of who it is. But you'd almost, if I was a permanent player and I saw 2 loan players picked and I wasn't, I'd be like, well, I'm the one who's committed here. I'm the one who said I'm going to spend the next four or so years at the club. So why am I being overlooked?
Yeah, especially you can understand why Sense would be in it, because I'm pretty sure that will be made permanent. That signing. Well, you think with Rashford, you think of all the issues he's had. Marlin's been in better form for Dortmund than Rashford had been at United, and they bring Rashford in the last minute, and he comes in. Of course, it's Marcus Rashford, and you're paying that much, so he'll be in the Champions League squad. But you think if you want to see who's more committed to the project, it's going to be the guy that's signed the long-term contract, not the guy that's dipping his toe in, having kind of looked around Europe in the previous few weeks, tried to get a better deal abroad, and then when that didn't happen, he then comes to Villa. So it's such a shame, but you just hope that instead of Marlon being quite dejected, that he's really trying to pump up his teammates for the Champions League, hoping that if they do well this year, then he can feature next year.
Yeah, I've just referenced that he didn't play for Holland last night. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen between now and Villa's next game, of course, but Preston away, quarterfinals of the FA Cup, obviously a competition he can play in. Would you expect him to start that game?
I think if Watkins is not fit, then he's got a really good chance to play as a 9, I think.
Okay.
But if Watkins is going to be fit, I think it'd be very difficult, because it's a game where I think Villa are going to take it very seriously. It's a huge game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you might not be able to rotate like you would for a Cardiff home game, and Marlon will have to come in from having not played a lot of minutes to a tough away ground where he's going to be up against big, strong defenders, quite a big atmosphere as well. So it's going to be difficult. I don't expect him to play if Watkins is fit.
Okay. No, you have got to look. You have got to feel for him. I do kind of agree with this from Peter Collins in the chat. He said Bailey's been improved since the transfer window. He's risen to the challenge of having competition. Marlon's time will come. He's going to be big for us. I think that Leon Bailey point is a valid point. Look, he's always going to have his detractors. People are always going to criticise him. He is incredibly frustrating. But I do think since January, he has made some vital contributions. And I do think he's looked a bit more like the Bailey of last season, I would say.
In fairness, he could have got much worse.
No, he was never going to get worse, let's face it, yeah.
But I think the reason why Leon Bailey keeps playing is he does give a bit of balance. And someone said to me, and I thought it was a really good point, he's got like the Jack Grealish about Man City, we think, what is he doing? But he does attract players onto him. Bailey does keep the ball for a long time. You never see him really do a first time pass or 1 or 2 touch. He does keep on holding the ball for a little while, and it can attract players to him. And then when he does pass it, Villa can then switch it out to the other side quite quickly. So that's one of the reasons he potentially plays, gives balance. But I still don't think Bailey's been fantastic, and I don't think he justifies the salary he's on at the moment. And I think he needs to go up another level if he's to stay at Villa in the summer.
I mean, he scored against Brugge in the first leg, didn't he?
Yeah. But was he good for the rest of the game? Was he?
Not really, probably, if I'm to be honest. The second half, when he came on against Brugge in the second leg, I did think again he was good. He made that assist for Asensio, so he's contributing more. But like you say, it's not a high bar. He wasn't exactly pulling up trees before. I don't think he steadily got better recently, but it's still not where he was at last season. Michael kind of Huggins is saying the only way we can answer the question about Marlon is what would we have done if we faced the same situation as Emery? I think that is a really good question, actually. What would you have done, Jacob? And I'll try and think what I would have done.
I probably would have bought. I would have bought in Rashford.
Well, just at all, you just wouldn't have done it. No, but let's say like Rashford has come. When it comes to naming the registration of the squad, would you have done the same thing as Emery?
Yeah. As soon as I heard that it was the 3-player rule rather than 5, I immediately assumed and thought, and a lot of the other coaches did, Villa, before I texted, they were like, it's going to be Marlon and Garcia. I think so. That was a consensus. So yeah, I probably would have done the same. But at the same time, I don't think Villa had much choice because Asensio, his name speaks for itself. You're not going to leave him out. You need a defender in there for Disasi, and then when you're paying more than 325,000 a week potentially for Marcus Rashford, then you're going to have to put him in the squad as well. So I would have done the same, but probably the only gripe you could say is that it's probably didn't need to get to that point. And if Villa had the foresight, but I appreciate it would have been very difficult because they didn't know that Rashford was going to become available in the final week of the window.
Yeah. And looking forward, then we've discussed the Preston game, and Villa are hopefully going to have a lot of games in different competitions left towards the back end of the season. I guess it's worth noting that Villa have somehow got back to almost full fitness now from nowhere after struggling with injuries for weeks. So that won't do Marlon any favours. But people do get injured, people do get suspended, things do happen. He could come on for 10 minutes and score a goal in a game. I guess March the 21st. There is still going to be opportunities for him, you would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think also with 5 subs, he could have some game time. All he needs is, let's say Villa are losing a game or drawing a game in the league, and he gets half an hour and he changes the game. And all of a sudden, Emery's outlook on him, maybe support his outlook on him himself, he get that confidence in himself. He hasn't had that big moment since being left out of that Champions League squad, which almost can be like a vindication or some sort of confidence builder. So things can change very quickly. You see a lot of players in this Villa squad, but they can go from not having a look to suddenly playing a lot of games and vice versa. So I think it's you just hope that he can get some sort of encouragement in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think I'm alone here, just by the nature of what I'm seeing in the chat. You said he's played 21% of the minutes available. I actually think in those times, I've seen a lot from him. So I think his argument would be, well, in the very limited chances I've been given, I've already made an impact. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think he gives you something different. I think he obviously runs behind. Like I've said with the statistics, he's very impactful in the box. Obviously, the gripe that Emery probably has is that he doesn't drop deep well enough, can't connect as well enough as the other players. But at the same time, he gives that different point of difference. Really, he's very direct. He runs in behind, makes really good runs in behind.
Yeah, movement's exceptional.
Really good, and yeah, I just love the way he runs. I tweeted it. He scurries across the floor. He's very aggressive in his run. He's very direct. So I think he gives Villa something different as well, and especially. Probably the closest stylistically to him is Leon Bailey in terms of running in behind from that right wing. So if Bailey's going through the motions or he's not quite there, then you've got a brilliant option as well in Marlon. And I think he's looked good, especially in those early games. He just needs to get back to that. And also maybe if he can get that goal as well, that will change things.
Okay, then. So just finally on Marlon, then, do you back him overall? If we're sat here in a year's time doing a show, do you think we'll be talking about Marlon being a success?
He was never going to be the marquee sign. So relatively speaking, I think he'll be a success. I don't think he doesn't look like he's going to be a player that's going to blow you out of the water like a Morgan Rogers. And you think he's going to be a huge asset, but I think he's going to be a really solid player for Villa, especially next year. He's got all the pedigree, and a lot of people thought he was going to be very, very good at an early age. He's been good, but he's not quite got to that level. And you think if he can work with Emery for a pre-season, then he's got every chance of getting to that next level.
Okay, Karan says in the chat, I think starting 20 days of April will be crucial because we play 7 matches in 21 days. So if Marlon starts for Premier League matches or gets a full 45 or a 30 per Premier League match, then we'll know he's in Emery's plans. You've got to think he will get a shot in the next month. Without running games, you've got to think something's going to happen for the lad. I do feel really, really sorry for him. Again, I know he's a footballer and people are short on sympathy for footballers, but I do feel sorry for him. It's not an ideal situation at all. And then Peter Collins is saying, hey, I'm not sure what podcast this would have been. There was speculation about transitioning Bailey to right back. I don't see any world in which that would ever happen. Potentially he could play a game Villa are losing at right wing back if we were playing 3 centre backs, but absolutely no chance you'll ever see him as a right back. He hasn't got right foot for a start. So he has got it. Actually, his right foot is half decent, but he's not a defender. He's never going to be a defender.
He kind of plays right wing back now, doesn't he? Sometimes when Disasi plays behind him,
he's never going to start a game in the position Cash plays, though, is he? That's just never going to happen.
I tell you what, if he plays right back, then spare a thought for Garcia, Cash, Disasi, Tristan Rowe, because they're probably ahead of him right back. But tell you, if Emery can get Leon Bailey as a right back, then my word, he's good.
That's not going to happen. Look, I'd be interested to know which podcast it was that said that. If it's any of my mates, I'll be sure to hammer them on WhatsApp. I've got more chance of playing right back than Leon Bailey. I'm arguably more of of a right back. Anything else you wanna talk about, Jacob? You've just referenced that you've been working hard in the background. Have you got anything coming out that you can tease, or anything that you've just done that you want people to read?
Yeah, so in the Athletic about 3 weeks ago, we put a thing out, a piece out saying, just give us your ideas. Is there anything you
Oh, I
want to
saw
write?
that.
Because I'm very conscious of, just writing things that I think find are interesting. So whenever I talk to Villa fans at the stadium or traveling, I always like to pick their brains. But we got a few really good ideas. So one of those ideas will be going out next week. I spent the last 3 weeks basically talking to as many coaches, agents, recruitment data guys from Villa, from other places in the Premier League, talking about who are the top couple of academy players. I think Villa's academy goes under the radar. You talk about Man City, you talk about Arsenal. A lot of scouts and a lot of agents say Villa quietly are one of the best. So yeah, we're going to write a piece on how the academy operations works, the aggressive recruitment, and the players, and a background on some of the best players as well. And that's been taking a little while. It's made me go up and down the country to speak to people, but that'll be going out next week. And I think I read a question in here as well. I think we'll do a podcast to accompany that as well, won't we, Dan? So that's one of them. And yeah, everyone wants a piece on how Monchi's viewed among agents and fellow recruitment people. So that'll be out as well next week. So 2 heavy pieces going out next week.
If I put in I haven't got anything off the top of my head, but if I was to put in a request for a story, no, I haven't got anything. I'm just asking if I was to message you, would you consider doing a piece?
This is the thing. We had like 100 comments, and a lot of them
Really?
were along the lines of what we've already got all on the spreadsheet that I work from. But yeah, if you want to give me an idea, then I can. If I haven't got it, then I'll certainly bear that in mind.
I mean, hopefully not a piece on Leon Bailey being transitioned into a role. But I wouldn't suggest that would be one for the Athletic audience. I've just seen the podcast that it came from. Just not going to say anything, but yeah, it's just never ever going to happen. It's ludicrous, in fact, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, that's what I think. And Jacob, a trip to Paris coming up for you. Surely you're going to Paris.
Can't wait for it. Yeah, on the Eurostar. So if anyone's on there, last time I was coming back from Bruges, I bumped into about 6 Villa fans, and 5 of them had Villa tattoos on their calves, and they were Aston Villa screensavers, and all they talked about was Aston Villa for the whole journey. And I tell you what, I was in my element. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So hopefully more people I can come into contact with on the way to Paris.
Okay, brilliant. I don't think there's anything else for us to for us to cover. Can you think of anything?
I don't think so, Dan. I'm seeing you tomorrow, aren't I? So we can have a good bit of discussion there.
Knees up.
And little knees up. A few Villa guys are going. How many Villa fans are going tomorrow?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5-ish. 5-ish. I don't know what 5-ish. Obviously, someone who's either Villa or you're not. There's not half a person going who's half Villa. But yeah, 5-ish. But we'll keep these plans. We'll keep these plans secret. We'll keep our
what, in case someone tries to crash it?
Maybe, yeah. We'll keep our powder dry. I did have something I wanted to say, and I've completely forgotten what it was.
What's it related to?
It was on the realms when we started talking about Paris. I had something I wanted to say, but it's no, it's gone.
Also, before the PSG game, Paris game, we're going to do a big piece on how Emery thought of in Paris and why things went south for him there. Very different scenarios there.
That's a good one. And then we have David Stars has just said, met Monchi in Brugge. Smell great. Lovely firm handshake.
He has got a very firm handshake. Yeah, I'll give him. I don't know about the smell. Didn't quite get that close.
I've smelt a lot of football personality in my time. That's not true, but two stand out to me as being the 2 best smelling people in football that I've smelt. Anyway, have you got a best smelling footballer?
When Pep Guardiola walked past me, I remember.
Nice.
Not good, but I can't really recall.
It's a great question.
What about you? Who's your 2?
There's 2, and they're pretty level. 1, Jamie Redknapp in the lift at Sky. He took the mick out of my accent, but he smelled absolutely unbelievable, like sensational. So much so that I can't even remember how I found out. I managed to copy his aftershave eventually. Molecule, it's called Molecule number 1. He smelled absolutely amazing. Second person who must just bathe in Creed, Jack Grealish. Honestly, he just smelled absolutely incredible. And I've remembered what I wanted to just quickly pick your brain about. So Cammy I don't want to like avoid stuff like this because I'm very aware that I have been very vocal over the last year and a half, and I have quietened down now. He said my mate has done 3 ways missed out on Paris tickets. Shocking from Villa. There is yet again some controversy around tickets and the way things are handled that doesn't surprise me at all, and I'm sure it doesn't surprise you.
No, I've had a few supporters reach out to me regarding this, and yeah, there's always seems to be some controversy regarding away games and how it's allocated and how Villa allocate them as well. So doesn't surprise me, sadly, and it's just such a shame that these guys that have been going to so many games and put so much money into travelling can't go. But
yeah, as usual, doesn't all add up, does it? Very cloak and dagger from the club, as always. They're not as cloak and dagger as they probably would want it to be, actually, with some of the stuff I've seen, but they try and be cloak and dagger and quite often get it wrong. It's disappointing. Maybe we'll do something on it next week. My full sympathy goes out to the people that are affected by it, because I know how much it means to them and they deserve to be there, quite frankly. But, nothing surprises me anymore. I have quietened down on it, but it's not gone away from my thoughts, and I will always call this stuff. I'm not afraid to talk about it, but it was starting to affect my own work, and people were starting to get aggy with me. So I have quietened down a little bit with it, but I'm not afraid to talk about it. But we are where we are. Maybe we'll be able to do something on it next week when we get a bit more information around it. But the information so far isn't brilliant. Adam says, best smelling footballer. This is the content that we need. I'm surprised no one's ever done a video on that. It is an incredible topic.
Dad, you always WhatsApp me and you say, "Can you do the podcast and we'll talk about this player or that player?" You never mentioned to me in the program notes that we'll talk about this, but that's fine by me. David Styles, Mourinho does smell good. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, have you smelled Jose?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, he was good. It was my first Premier League game as a journalist. Southampton Tottenham. He walked past me. Yeah, very vivid memory.
Oh, I wonder what he wears. I bet he's got he's kind of got an aftershave that no one else has got.
Has he got an aftershave range as well?
Well, possibly. It could be Jose on Jose, couldn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but if anyone else has smelt any footballers, do let us know in the chat. Although we are about to go, so it'll probably be a bit late to let us know. The show has turned into absolute nonsense.
It's not my fault. This is all Dan. So
David Styles.
Anyone in the
relevant to the
chat. This is Dan. Dan brought this all on.
Well, I'll let people know what Jacob smells like tomorrow night.
Pressure on me now.
I'll be sure to let people know if he's smelling good or smelling not. So yeah, okay, let's go. We've got away from ourselves completely here, Jake. I'll just bang my big nose on my microphone as well. So it's definitely time to go. But we'll do something next week, as you've already said, and yeah, watch out for that, and we'll get some content in next week. Of course, a big week leading up to the FA Cup quarter-final, so there'll always be plenty to talk about. Thank you to those that have joined us live in the chat. Much appreciated, except for you, David Styles, because you've killed the show, quite frankly. And thank you to those that will go on and watch and listen as well. If you could leave some reviews on Apple Podcast, that would be great. 5 stars preferably, with a nice little written review. That would be great. Spotify, if you could leave a comment. And I don't think you can do stars on Spotify, but you can do stars overall for the podcast, I believe. So if you could do that would be great. We're now being compared to Dan Rollinson and Matt Kendrick with the Claret and Blue Pod. That's not a great place to be in. I mean, Matt's probably not even that much older than me, actually, but I don't want to be getting compared to him, because I know he loves that kind of niche stuff. And yet nothing else really left to say. So thanks to Jacob again. Have a great weekend, and as always, up the Villa.